Chairman Keene, Vice Chairman Hamilton, distinguished members of the Commission, it's an honor for me to speak to you today. Neither the American people nor our federal, state, and local governments have yet been able to fully understand the long-developing crisis in national security which suddenly revealed itself to us on 9/11. Consequently, it should be no surprise that we have not yet been able to set a clear course for the future and to determine what steps we must take to increase the likelihood that such disasters can be prevented in the future. Attacks by those who carried out the events of 9/11 have continued against American interests since that time, although none has yet taken place again within the United States itself. But that's just a matter of time. It falls to the Commission to provide the clearest possible view of the causes of 9/11. Both the motivations and passions of those abroad who are consumed with hatred for us, as well as an understanding of the workings of the national security elements of government which served us well before 9/11 and those that did not. It is only with this information that you will be able to judge the adequacy of those changes which have been put in place since September and to highlight those things still to be done. It's a difficult task, but one in which failure is not an option. All Americans have personalized the ways in which the attacks of 9/11 came home to them. For me, it was the awful understanding sometime during the night of September 11th and 12th of the magnitude of my failure and that of my colleagues at the FBI, the CIA, and DOD to fully implement those systemic changes to our national security structure writ large that could have prevented this attack. It's harsh but true. The tragedy is that we had the vision but not the will. So is the problem domestic intelligence collection, or is it one of analysis? For instance, last July, John Hamre and I and 5 of our colleagues collaborated on an article that was published in The Economist and entitled "America Needs More Spies." It focuses on the critical requirement to improve the collection of intelligence domestically. We asserted that the harsh facts of the 9/11 tragedy are, and I quote, secret members of a conspiratorial foreign organization operated clandestinely abroad and in this country for almost a decade before September 11th to plan, lay the groundwork for, and successfully carry out a surprise attack on the United States. The activity was conducted by the leadership in Afghanistan, by plotters in the shadow of a Hamburg mosque, and by operational travelers from abroad, and by an established al-Qaeda support structure based in this country, unquote. The bulk of the criticism of the national security establishment's performance before 9/11 has centered on a failure to, quote, connect the dots. While I concede the lack of analysis and interagency communication might have contributed marginally to the intelligence failure, the main cause was a lack of effective collection against al-Qaeda, both domestically and abroad. There simply were not enough of the right dots that would help us truly understand the plans and intentions of the enemy attacking us. My remarks today address this issue in the context of domestic collection. Under current ground rules, domestic intelligence collection is primarily, if not exclusively, the responsibility of the FBI. Before proceeding further, however, we must clarify a distinction which, sometimes unwittingly and sometimes intentionally, I think, has clouded this debate for years. That is, we must make the critical distinction between collection and gathering as it pertains to intelligence. While the FBI correctly highlights its unmatched ability to gather evidence, and with it, information, there is nonetheless a national security imperative which distinguishes intelligence collection from a similar but different function found in law enforcement. Gathering, which is not driven and informed by specific focused national security needs, is not the same as intelligence collection, as the DCI and the intelligence community understand that term. This collection is accomplished not incidental to law enforcement, but by a conscious, specifically targeted, operational clandestine espionage activity, whether technical, human, or a combination of both. Collection, as I will use the term today, means those intelligence activities which are dictated by, coupled to, a policy-driven, strategically determined set of collection requirements. And this is accomplished by a focused clandestine operational activity. Tom Powers, the biographer of Richard Helms, described this focused, proactive effort to as an effort to determine where the danger lies. That is what we have to have in domestic collection rather than a more reactive approach to people who have broken or are about to break our laws. So what are the essential elements and solutions to domestic intelligence collection which protect the country and at the same time protect our constitutional liberties? First, I think we must recognize that domestic intelligence is critical and is the missing element of the national security system. Second, I believe we must acknowledge that the FBI has failed to establish an effective nationally directed domestic intelligence collection organization despite claiming counterterrorism and counterintelligence as its number 1 and 2 priorities. Ironically, it is very well positioned geographically and resource-wise to perform domestic intelligence collection missions. It has thousands of special agents, thousands and thousands of recruited assets, surveillances, court-authorized electronic intercepts. We do not need significant new authorities, but we do need to use better those authorities we already have. In order to establish an effective nationally directed domestic intelligence collection capacity, the FBI must establish a national security entity responsible for all domestic intelligence collection against individuals and organizations who threaten our core diplomatic, economic, and national intelligence interests, whether they be terrorist organizations, intelligence service, or other foreign elements. The new organization must be a career service with the attendant recruiting, training, operational, and administrative structures, and priority emphasis within the larger FBI organization. It should comprise approximately 60% of the total FBI support and special agent personnel, consistent with the prioritization of counterterrorism and counterintelligence on the top of the FBI task list. For over 9/10 of the FBI field office special agents in charge to have no national security, counterterrorism, or counterintelligence experience does not communicate in practice or in fact that counterterrorism and counterintelligence are the Bureau's top 2 priority areas. For the Bureau's award program to recognize, as it did last week in the Presidential Rank Awards, predominantly criminal law enforcement accomplishments, indicates that either the Bureau's counterterrorism and counterintelligence accomplishments are inadequate, and if so, there should be consequences, or the Bureau's statement that counterterrorism and counterintelligence are the top 2 priorities is not accurate. I've provided in my statement a fuller description of what this organization, this national security entity within the Bureau should comprise. I agree with Attorney General Barr that the MI5 solution that's widely seen around this town is wrong for lots of reasons. First of all, we don't need a British system with British antecedents and its roots in British history and British governance. What we need is an American system rooted in our needs. But we also don't need to continue not doing the business of domestic collection that we've got now. So I do believe that the MI5 issue is often held up as a red herring here to divert attention to the problems of MI5, which are significant. So I stress I don't believe we should do that, but I also stress that we cannot continue on the path we are. I have provided at your request a list of questions which I believe will help you better understand the several policy, operational, and administrative areas that need to be transformed in order for the FBI to succeed in its domestic intelligence mission. Domestic intelligence collection, as opposed to gathering, must be part of and synchronized with national foreign intelligence collection. National foreign intelligence is driven by a national security requirements process. The domestic intelligence collection activity must also be driven by the same national security requirements process. The National Security Council, the DCI, and the Attorney General must provide validated collection requirements to the FBI and hold the FBI accountable for producing and disseminating domestic intelligence. In conclusion, if the FBI can make this truly significant change and no longer cling to the law enforcement-centered traditions and approaches which have served them and the country so well against another set of adversaries in another time, then we should all get firmly behind their reform efforts and bring the resources of our country to bear to ensure they succeed. If, however, the FBI cannot fully make this transition, and this will be clear to you as you approach the end of the Commission's deliberations, then I believe that you will have no choice but to propose some even more radical solution which places these responsibilities for counterterrorism and counterintelligence in another, perhaps new organization. The stakes are just too high and the time too short to do otherwise.